Everyone was quite surprised when Knight Specialty Insurance Company provided former President Donald Trump with a last-minute bond put up just in time to prevent the state of New York from seizing Trump's assets and selling them off to pay the $454 million judgment against him. Now that company seems to be getting a lot of scrutiny because bond experts have some questions and some concerns about this whole shady arrangement. Now, the Daily Beast looked into it and talked to 3 different experts on this. And, well, they found that Knight Specialty Insurance isn't even licensed by New York's Department of Financial Services. Not only that, but the firm's financial statements show that it doesn't even have the money to meet the capital requirements for posting the bond. That's weird, but it gets better. Turns out that the legal document from Knight Specialty Insurance Company doesn't even promise that it will pay the money back if the former president loses his appeal. That would leave it to Donald Trump to pay for that, negating the entire reason for getting a bond, an insurance company guarantee. So now one of the experts is N. Alex Hanley, an expert on how companies appeal large judgments. He said this is not common, this entire thing. The only reason this would be done is to limit the liability to the surety or the bondholder. Maria T. Vulno, who was formerly New York's top financial regulator, said this: "There are many questions here, and that short piece of paper gives very little comfort. I believe this paper isn't worth much, and there are more shenanigans behind it," said another former regulator, who's also familiar with the industry norms, but decided to speak on the condition of anonymity. So wait, what happened? What's going on here? Is this a real bond? Did he actually pay the bond? Or what is going on here? Nobody knows, and that's why everyone is confused. Now, it could be that Letitia James is correct. She's the New York Attorney General. She's like, hey, wait a minute. There's some weird stuff in this, okay? She basically says that Trump is trying to avoid paying this judgment and using this to delay. And of course, here you have the other side. You've got Trump and MAGA donor Don Hankey Jr. Mr. Hankey to the rescue, right? This guy is someone who is known as the king of subprime loans. He comes in at the last minute with a shady loan that may or may not exist because he doesn't have the money for it. They don't have the surplus for the minimum capital requirements. They're not licensed, like I said before. What is going on here? Did they or did they not put up the money? That's what's really important. Now, apparently they didn't because they don't have it. Knight Specialty cannot loan out more money than it has. And according to court filings, the $175 million bond is more than they have. New York law limits how much money state-regulated surety companies can post in a single bond to 10% of a firm's total capital and surplus. Knight Specialty only has $138 million in surplus. Trump's bond alone would make up 127% of the company's reserves. So, wait, you can't do that. You can't loan out money that you don't have, right? Now, the AG's office immediately questioned whether Knight Specialty is even good for the money. The law enforcement agency said it takes exception to the sufficiency of the surety, noting that Knight Specialty is trying to operate without a certificate of qualification. So then how's this even working? Well, apparently they're operating through what's called the excess and surplus lines insurance market. So what is that? That is reserved for high-risk business ventures or for those that have a severe loss history that makes them untouchable in the primary market. Well, Donald Trump admitted, I am untouchable. No one will give me money for this bond, for the $454 million. Virtually impossible. So that opens him up for Don Hankey Jr. to say, well, he can't make it in that market, so obviously we're going to have to go with the high-risk market. So now that forces them to find a willing insurer that isn't licensed in their home state. So, look, this company, Knight Specialty Insurance, is from Texas. Now, the insurance company's president, Amit Shah, told CBS that Knight is, quote, not a New York domestic insurer, and New York surplus lines insurance laws do not regulate the solvent of non-New York excess lines insurers. So that's why they don't have to follow New York law, but it does have to follow Texas law. That's why it's registered with the Surplus Lines Stamping Office of Texas, a government-created nonprofit that tracks these types of figures. And so, through them, we know their financial statements. Now, that said, New York also has a nonprofit called the Excess Line Association of New York, or ELANY. Now, registration in ELANY is voluntary, but any company filing these types of transactions has to use a licensed broker within 45 days. So far, ELANY says they have no knowledge of the specific transaction at this time, and of course, it should be noted that Knight Specialty Insurance Company is not on the ELANY voluntary list, so I guess they don't need to be. But there's another reason that they don't need to be, and apparently, according to the bond itself that they had issued, they're not even on the hook should Donald Trump fail to pay it. Bond number 350588 states that Knight Specialty Insurance Company does hereby undertake that if the judgment is dismissed, Donald J. Trump shall pay the sum directed. Again, what's the point of having the insurance? None of this makes any sense, okay? So to kind of show you how crazy this is, let's do a comparison. The E. Jean Carroll bond that he recently taken out, okay? So that states that if Trump fails to pay, the bondholder will. That's how it's supposed to work. So the other one is odd. Now, there's another weird thing in this contract. Standard practice would be to promise that the loser would pay the judgment plus interest and costs. This does not do that. This says the liability of this bond shall not exceed the sum of $175 million. I am not a legal expert, but I can't make sense of this. And it's not because I'm not a legal expert, it's because this is fishy as hell. And this stinks. Hanley, the bond expert, said that this entire bond is nonsensical and can only be set up for one reason: to cause delays. Because no one can make sense of it, head or tails. Okay? I don't know if that's true, but would it fit into his legal strategy of postponing the inevitable? Abso-freaking-lutely. And it seems to be working very well. In fact, the court has scheduled a bond hearing to hear about the particulars of whether this bond can actually be accepted on April 22nd. Really, if Letitia James had her way, she would have a lot of Donald Trump's properties by now. But this bond saved him from having to go through that, even though we're still trying to figure it out, if it's a real bond or not. But once again, another delay, another way that Trump is gaming the system to his advantage in order to delay having to pay for the massive amounts of fraud that he is liable for. So, now let me give you a quote here from Mr. Hankey. In a recent interview with Reuters, he said that he had accepted collateral for the $175 million bond, but wasn't sure exactly what the source of it was. Quote, I don't know if it came from Donald Trump or from Donald Trump and supporters. He then regrets that he only charged Trump a low fee for his services. That's great. I'm telling you, man. Birds of a feather. He and Mr. Hankey absolutely deserve each other.